This is pre-ClickFunnels. It's the first time I'd built my company up and it collapsed. I remember one of my now business partners, Brent Peters, I remember he came to me in this meeting. We had about 100 employees at the time and we had to lay off like 40 or 50 people overnight. People were leaving, people were upset. Like, it was chaos. It was like one of the darkest moments of my life. And Brent called me, had me come in his office and he's like, hey, my wife wants me to quit. Like, everything's falling apart. I had given him and everybody huge pay deductions. I was like, everyone, we got to cut your pays in half. I'm sorry, but we have no money, right? And I remember he asked me this question. He was like, is this going to work out? I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, is this the end or are we going to be successful? I'm like, no, of course we're going to be successful. He's like, how do you know? I'm like, I don't know, but I don't have any doubt it's going to be. Like, yeah, we're in a rocky period, but like, we'll figure it out. And he was like, okay, if you know this is going to be successful, then I'm in. I don't even care. And he stayed during this time when he could have and probably should have left. And because of that, fast forward a few years later, we built ClickFunnels. He was one of the last guys standing, became a partner in the business and everything. And it was interesting to me because he was leaning on me to be like, yes, I know we're going to come back. And so the first thing you have to do, like the first phase in this is like, if you're struggling right now, like your certainty, your faith that you will come back is key to getting the people around you to want to be successful with you. What's up? This is Russell. Welcome back to my vault. Today I've got a slightly controversial book. I don't know. I don't want to get political, but this one's called Trump, The Art of the Comeback. And the reason why this book is cool for a couple reasons. If you've seen this book, you're like, that doesn't look like the book, Russell. This is actually a pre-release copy. It says this is an unrevised proof. Please do not quote for publication until you check your copy against the finished book. It's confidential. Anyway, when you're an author and you write a book, a lot of times you'll create a galley copy. You send this to publicists, to your friends, to other authors to read. And somehow I found a copy, one of the originals on eBay, pre-first edition. This one cost me $958.83 because I wanted to learn about the art of the comeback from Trump anyway, but I thought it'd be more fascinating to read a pre-first edition copy. And so that's what this one is right here, which is kind of fun. Now, this book was also written before he was ever President Trump. So this is before he won and then lost and then won again. But it's kind of interesting because you can look at like, what was Trump's playbook to make it back on the second term? And this book gives you some interesting insights of what he was thinking and what he was probably doing because, as you know, the last political campaign was his comeback. And this book was a blueprint on how he actually did it. Love him or hate him, I don't really care. We're talking about the strategy, not the thing. I think for me it was interesting because obviously in anybody's career, right, there's the ups and the downs. And it's funny because as you start growing in anything, right, when you are the hero and you're growing, everybody's cheering you, right? Like we all love like the hero journey and like people growing and like striving. But then there comes a point where you start having success and it's the weirdest thing. This is the part of success I was not ever expecting, where a lot of the people who are your fans and your friends who are cheering you up, when you get to the top, they start waiting for you to fail. They want to see it. They're waiting for it. And it's the weirdest thing. And I remember for me, when I had a couple years ago, my first big hiccups where I had made mistakes, the company started struggling, like different things happened where I didn't execute on things perfectly. And a lot of times it was the people who were your cheerleaders growing up who were waiting for you to fall. And it's fascinating. You see this in media all the time, right? Like we love the hero story, but we love to see the hero fall. We love to watch them crash and burn, and people are waiting for that. When they do, man, especially nowadays with social media, everyone wants to jump and like talk about how the hero fell, some of their favorite things. And so what this book about is the next phase. It's the comeback story, right? And a lot of people never come back. A lot of people, like, they go out there, they try something amazing, they get cheered along the way, they fail, and then that's where it ends because they're too afraid to come back. Like the pain of them losing is so heavy and so strong. And so for me, it's like, I feel like in my journey, in my business right now, like I'm in a comeback phase. And so I was like, man, I want to read from somebody who's gone through that multiple times. And it's really fun in this book. If you haven't had a chance to read it yet, on page 11 here inside of the pre-first edition copy, he said, front page headlines heralded my downfall, but I never had any doubt that I'd come back. And you look at Trump's mindset. It wasn't like, oh no, I lost, everything's done, like it's gone forever. It's like, we're struggling right now, but we're going to come back. And again, he wrote this book. This is back when he was just the real estate guy, right? Before he ever ran for president. Like, this is when everybody loved him. Like this is when he was on The Apprentice, he was on TV shows, everyone loved him, right? And then you fast forward to this presidential thing happened, right? And I'm not going to get political. I don't care which side you're on. This is more from a marketing standpoint. Like, look at what happened. Like, he won the first campaign, right? People loved him. People hated him. 4 years later, he loses the campaign. And for most people, what they've done, they were like, all right, well, I'm done, and they would have left. Instead, he spent the next 4 years mounting this comeback, right? I remember a year or two later, my wife and I were at a UFC fight. We were UFC 299, my wife and I were watching Sugar Sean fight. We had like floor seats because my birthday. I was like, I wanted to sit down here. And I remember we're sitting there and all of a sudden, like in the middle of it, Trump comes out. It was Sugar Sean versus Chito Vera. And my wife and I had floor seats for my birthday. And we're sitting there and it was cool. Like if you've ever been to a UFC fight, floor seats are awesome because like everyone's there. Like we saw Mr. Beast, we saw like Damon John, we saw like all of the who's who of social media was all on the ground floor. We're sitting there like with all the celebrities thinking we're so cool. And then all of a sudden the music changes and Trump comes out with Dana White and they make this big entrance and people are cheering and booing and all this, mostly cheering. You watch that, I'm like, this is 2 years and he's mounting his comeback campaign, right? And you start looking like he never like sat back and licked his wounds and just kind of like, at least not publicly publicly. Instead, he was like instantly from day number one coming back like, all right, it's time for my comeback story. And again, whether you love him or you hate him, like learning the art of the comeback from Trump is just a fascinating thing. To watch him do this in business, watch him do it politically, and probably in other areas of his life, who knows? But this book had a lot of really cool lessons for me. And one thing he talks about in this book that I thought was really powerful, and if you frame it through this and think about it, it might change it for you. I know it did for me. And what he talks about, he says the comeback story sells. People love the hero's journey and they love the comeback. And so for me, it starts thinking back in time, start reverse engineering, like what's the goal, right? And this is one of the weird things about entrepreneurship. Like a lot of times we can see the end goal, right? But then all the steps leading to that goal get really fuzzy. I ask entrepreneurs all the time, like, what are you trying to do? What's your definite purpose? Like, oh, I want to win a 2 Comma Club award. I want to make $1 million. They have this end goal, right? And so they see the end goal. This is the end goal, right? This is the thing that they want. They have a vision of that, right? But over here, this is where they're at, right? They're at the bottom of the comeback story, ready to come back on the thing. And in between here and here is a whole bunch of fog, and it's hard for them to see, right? And so what you have to do if you're going to mount a comeback story, the very first thing you got to really understand is that to do that, you can't just look at the end goal and just hope for it, right? You have to literally sit back and reverse engineer. Like, okay, for me to do this, what are all the steps we have to do to go backwards? Okay, I think about this sometimes, like when I'm setting goals, like there's different types of goals, right? There's what I call a Hall of Fame goal. Hall of Fame goal is like, what is your legacy? Who do you want to become, right? And I'm not talking about it right now, because the Hall of Fame goal is the first big thing that like you want to be remembered for. But then after that, you come one step closer, and the next goal in somebody's career, I call this the Super Bowl goal, right? The Super Bowl happens once a year, so it's a year goal. So for you, like your comeback story, like, when you achieve this thing, this is your Super Bowl, right? So if you look at this as a Super Bowl goal, then now you can reverse engineer. Like if you were a coach on a football team and like we know that we have a Super Bowl, the next thing is like breaking down, okay, if we know we have a Super Bowl, what are all the steps that lead to the Super Bowl, right? So I know that there's going to be however many games. There's this game, this game, this game, this game, this game. So also we reverse engineer, like here's all the steps that get us to the Super Bowl goal, right? So we reverse engineer that. Now that we have kind of like the macro, now it's not so foggy. It's like, hey, these are the different steps to get to the Super Bowl goal, right? I know that every single week we've got a game, and every single week we're leading towards this thing, right? Now that I reverse engineered that, now it's like, hey, now based on that, what are all the things we have to do to prepare for and to excel at this step in the process, right? That becomes the first focus point. Then what are all the things I gotta do at this step in the process to prepare for it? And this step, right? And what are the adjustments I gotta make if we lose? What are the adjustments I gotta make? And so you're building in all the steps to get you back up here to the actual Super Bowl goal, okay? And so for you guys, as you're mounting your comeback story, it all starts with that. Like, what does the comeback look like for you? When will you know that you've actually arrived? Right? And think about that, like write that down. Like, what does that actually look like for you? What does it taste like? What does it feel like? We talked in an earlier video about creating a vivid vision. Like, what's the vision of that thing you want? And then step back and say, okay, to actually achieve that, if I don't define it and create all the backward steps, then it's just gonna be this foggy thing. You're gonna be wandering around. You're never actually gonna hit it, right? Entrepreneurs are so good at seeing the vision, so bad at reverse engineering the steps. And so that's the key you gotta do is come back, okay, for me to mount this comeback story, I know what it looks like at the end. What are all the steps? And reverse engineering and say, okay, that means if I'm gonna hit this thing by the end of the year or by 2 years from now, whenever you come back, when you want that thing to hit, like what are the things you gotta do today? And just like the very first time you took the hero's journey and you were having success, as people start seeing this, they'll start switching back to your side and they'll start cheering you on because they will want you to win once again. All right, now if you want a copy of my notes from this book, Trump, The Art of the Comeback, obviously you can go get a brand new copy on Amazon. If you want notes from the original first edition galley author copy of the book, in the description down below, click on that link, will take you over. You have a chance to get my notes and have a chance to read through here and just kind of get the ins and the outs of the things that Trump did to mount his comebacks and give you a playbook you can use for you if you are in that spot in your business, in your life, where you're ready to mount your comeback and build out your comeback story. If that's you, like it is for me, this book will become a guide that'll help you along that journey. Thanks so much. Appreciate you all, and I'll see you guys on the next video.